A while back, I received a comment from one of my subscribers named Berserkly, letting me know that up here in Oakland, California, or in the Oakland area, I'm actually here in Hayward, California, which is a little bit, I believe it's south of Oakland, that a guy was speeding in a cemetery, lost control, and crashed his car into a crypt and died in the accident. He didn't have a lot of details, but he just wanted to give me a heads up. So I did a little research online. I Googled it, and I was able to find that, sure enough, a man by the name of, he has a very long and difficult to pronounce last name, Michael Joseph Elian Zorarez. He lived in Newark, New Jersey, and I guess he was out here visiting his mom's gravesite. Now, I was able to find on Find a Grave a number of other people with the last name Elias Zorarez, but I wasn't able to find any grave sites that were more recent. They were all fairly older. The accident happened in June of 2006, and at the time the article said that he was here to visit his mother's gravesite, but I wasn't able to find anything on Find a Grave where anyone with that last name was buried here at that time. But then again, if she was married, she probably had a different last name anyway, so that's probably why I wasn't able to find her. But I did find some of his other relatives, so maybe he grew up in this area and then at some point moved back and was living in New Jersey. But how sad is that, to come to visit your mom at a gravesite? And I guess that's why Berserkly left the message. It was probably on my fairly recent video, when I talked about a guy who visited his mother's gravesite on New Year's Day and was shot and killed right there at her gravesite. So this guy, Michael, there weren't enough witnesses, I guess, to know exactly what happened, but people did see them speeding, him in another car, and the people weren't sure if this was a case of road rage where something happened outside of the cemetery and then they decided to drive into the cemetery to settle the matter and they were still speeding around. But this is a pretty large cemetery. The other guy was chasing Michael, who crashed, or maybe they were just in here racing. That may sound odd, but I have seen so many crazy things in cemeteries over the last number of years, visiting grave sites for this channel especially, and it's certainly not unusual to see people just driving like maniacs in the cemeteries. I mean, I just can't believe how fast people drive. I think sometimes people, feel an obligation to visit their loved ones in the cemetery, and how busy we all are, and I guess if you're just here on a weekend and you only have a certain amount of time to go out and do errands, and you want to go visit your loved one, and you feel a sense of obligation, and you're not really thinking about it, you're just one more thing to check off your list. At least that's what it seems to me, because I see these people, they just racing into the cemeteries, they jump out of their car, they practically throw some flowers on the grave, they're there for a couple of minutes, and then they race out. In fact, just this morning at another cemetery, that happened. A guy came barreling into the cemetery. He couldn't have been at his loved one's gravesite for more than 2 minutes. Left some flowers and almost burned rubber on the way out of the cemetery. So nothing surprises me in cemeteries anymore. But the irony and craziness of dying, being laid to rest in a cemetery in one of these crypts here, thinking that this is your quiet final resting place, and then to have a car come speeding and crashing into your crypt, it knocked off the crypt cover, and you could actually see the vault behind the crypt facade. Of course, the person who was laid to rest here never knew what happened, but I'm sure it was a shock to his family. And it is interesting how some of these, I've been driving around trying to find the exact spot. What was that, 15 years ago or so? And there's only a couple of places where the crypts are really close to the street. And that, again, also is not unusual. I've been to so many cemeteries where the crypt itself is just a foot or two from the actual road where the cars are driving. And I've often thought, gosh, if someone just, not even speeding, but just was just not paying attention or whatever, driving and just knocked right into the crypt, I mean, that would be very easy to do in a lot of the cemeteries that I've been to. So the man who crashed and was killed in the accident was driving a vintage 1967 Corvette convertible. And apparently witnesses saw the other car and said it was a Mercedes, but they weren't able to get the license plate. I guess the cars were driving too fast. And the people probably weren't really paying attention until after the crash, and I'm sure that was pretty shocking, and you wouldn't expect the person just to drive away from the scene of the accident, but that person did. And in the article, investigators, the police, were asking for any leads that they could follow up on to find out exactly what happened. I don't know if anyone ever came forward with additional information or not. What a strange way to go. I mean, there's so many strange ways to die, but to die in a car crash in a cemetery, that's definitely way up there as one of the very strangest ways to go. This week I want to give a shout out and a very big thank you to my newest Patreon supporter, Dawn Ridpath. Thank you so much, Dawn, for your extra generous donation to my channel. It's very appreciated. So thank you once again, Berserkly, for giving me the heads up about this incident here in the cemetery. Until our next trip to the cemetery together, thanks for sharing the memories, everybody.